to the Biz Gone Social podcast. We help entrepreneurs navigate how to get known, get customers, and get the edge over their competition. Here is your host, Lorraine Duncan.
So welcome, and here we are again with episode 12. And my promise to you, as always, is I want to give you a little bit of verbal caffeine that will energize your social media marketing and help you stay social. After all, don't you want to be the business everyone's talking about? I know I do. And today I'm so excited to have Merrill Loechner, Chief Storyteller at Smith Douglas Associates. Isn't that a great job title? As a marketing expert, Merrill knows that while most people don't have a sales pitch, everybody loves a good story. In fact, the right story can add enough value to your brand that you can actually charge more for it. Today, Merrill's going to share her insights with us on storytelling in social media. How are you today, Merrill?
I am doing fantastic. And yourself?
I'm great. So tell me a little bit more about what you do. And I'd love to hear about a little bit more what you do and how you use storytelling and why it's so important in social media.
I have been a writer since I was a little kid. Literally, I think I got my first check from a publisher when I was 9. So I know the power of a really good story. And when I graduated from college, I needed to decide whether I was going to, become a world famous writer or have health insurance. So I went into corporate instead. And through corporate marketing, I learned how to use storytelling to build a brand, to build awareness, and to generate engagement. And it's really funny because I've been 30 plus years in marketing, and I hate being sold to. I have about 300 different anti-ad software on my computer. I didn't even know YouTube had ads until last year because they are all blocked on my computer. So one of the things I do for my clients is teach people how to sell to people like me who do not want to hear your sales pitch, who will actively block you anytime you try to sell me. So the way I look at it is, don't try to mug me with a sales pitch. You're going to need to seduce me with a story.
Yeah, and interesting that you say that when you grew up, I still don't know what I want to be when I grow up, by the way, but yeah, that was one of my dreams, was always to be a writer. And you really actually implemented what you wanted to be, and you took action. Quick question, I'm a social media expert. I love social media, and I have seen in my own business how a story will sell without me even have to say buy. So how do you see storytelling as important in social media?
Primarily because so many sales pitches nowadays feel like a mugging. It's like, buy this, buy that, give me your money. That's pretty much what most of these sales pitches are. Give me your money. A story is an education. It's an engagement. It goes straight to the back of the brain that learns and remembers. You can rabbit off facts and features and benefits and prices. People will remember that for about 15 seconds. That's what short-term memory holds. You put things into a story, it has context. It develops flavor. It develops memories. And people will remember a story longer. And they tend to take that story and add it to their own personal story. So they become, again, engaged in what you're trying to say, not so much in what you're trying to sell. And when people become engaged in your story, people become engaged in your brand, they want to support you, and they'll do that financially.
Yeah, and I think that, when it comes to social media, that engagement is so important. And before that engagement even happens, there has to be a connection.
Yes.
And you, as a storyteller, very well how automatically sometimes you'll hear a story and sometimes you won't be connected, but in other ways you will be. And I've been talking a lot about that over the past month. I've been talking about branding and voice and storytelling. How do you see in your own marketing and what you do for other companies, how do you weave storytelling in a social media post? What are some ways that you do that?
Well, for one of the things you always have to remember, social media is a really bad place for just plain advertising. It's just cluttered with advertising at this point. So people are kind of shutting off. At any point they think you're trying to sell them something, they're just going to scroll by. If you look in Facebook, if you look at LinkedIn, is the, hey, download my 300-page white paper on blah, 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 blah. And it's just overwhelming. What you have to remember is people want to learn something. People want to feel that, oh, this person knows who I am. And one of the things people always have to remember about social media is the social aspect. It's not just you standing there and blasting out content. I have a client in a big law firm, and I asked him, well, where do you get most of your clients from? And he's like, oh, through networking. I go to a lot of networking events. And my response was, I can save you a lot of money. We're just going to get a life-size cardboard cutout of you and bring it to all these networking events with your business cards in one hand and white papers in the other. And that way you don't actually have to talk to anyone. We'll just send that. And he's staring at me in horrified. And like, that's what your social media account looks like right now. You're not talking to anyone. You're not engaging to anyone. You're just info dumping at them. And you're not giving any reason for them to come back to you and ask questions or say, oh, wow, I didn't know that. That's one of the most important things about social media, the social part. Tell stories, get people engaged, ask them questions, tell them something interesting that happened, and then ask them, what would you do in this situation? How would you have handled this? Did anything like this ever happen to you? Make them part of the story. Remember, the best part of a story when you're trying to sell something, you shouldn't be the hero of the story. Your customers should be. How do you make the people you want to sell to the hero of their own stories?
Yeah, that's awesome. I was just thinking about yesterday, I read this. It was just a quote. It was by Gary Vaynerchuk, and he said, it actually wasn't a quote. He was, he had a lot of copy underneath the quote. And he said, basically, is like you get all these random connections and random followers, but how many of those people did you actually say hello to? It was just a simple say hello to. And that has been my challenge for all my watchers for the last couple of weeks is don't just post random stuff. Try to engage with people and try to get to know them.
Exactly.
And it's funny. A lot of people don't even see social media as an engagement tool, as just the first part of that whole dating relationship, that you have to get to know somebody before you go all the way to the kiss, all the way to go to bed, or go all the way to the marriage, however you want to look at that.
Yeah, exactly. A lot of social media selling looks like marry me, marry me, marry me. It's just like, I don't know if I want to date you yet.
True. And I don't even know if I really want to know you yet.
Exactly.
Do you have, you're online a lot. You're on LinkedIn, especially a lot. Mm-hmm. Do you have an example of a brand on social media that does storytelling well?
I think one of the most interesting brands that I follow that I'm completely engaged with is Beekman 1802. If you've ever heard of the Beekman Boys, they've been around for about 10 years. There's been books. There was a reality show. The two guys actually won The Amazing Race, and they have been telling their story now for a decade. And so they don't even call their customers, they're neighbors. Wow. And recently they got picked up by Ulta. They have a skincare line now, and they got picked up in 400 Ulta stores. And this was a big thing for a small company. The problem was COVID came. So they were supposed to be at this big Ulta conference where they're explaining their brand and who they are, but there was no conference. So the two things that the Beekman Boys did was, in the 400 stores that Ulta was carrying their product, they called women and minority-owned bakeries and had cookies sent to the store. And then they reached out to their customers and clients, their neighbors, and saying, if one of these stores are in your neighborhood, can you do us a favor? Could you bring them some flowers, either from a local florist or from your own garden, and just explain to the salespeople in the store about who we are and what we believe? And then take a selfie with them and send it to us. 30,000 selfies later, the CEO of Ulta called in and said, this has never happened before. We can't keep your products on the store. Our client, not only our customers, our employees are giddy over your product line. And nowhere in any of the social media for Beekman 1802 saying, this is our product, this is what it does, this is why you should buy it. Because it was just so in part of the brand of it. The product almost didn't matter. It was just becoming part of this worldwide love affair with these two guys.
Wow, that's awesome. And you see that a lot with, I always say over and over again, I've been saying a couple of my favorite brands throughout my different podcasts, and Nike to me always hits me where it's at. It's like, you can do it, and never ever, you don't even see the Nike logo until the end of the commercial, and they're not selling anything. They're they're just out there telling a story. Mm-hmm. And I just love, lately I've been seeing a lot of that on the commercials, like on TV. Mm-hmm. There's a little story, and especially like when they want to target families, mm-hmm. and they're telling a little story, and it's just amazing how you can connect right away. You see it, you say, oh, that's my problem too. And you're connecting, and then all of a sudden you place yourself in the story. And I think
exactly. And it's also, again, stickiness and memory. People will rarely remember facts, but they will always remember emotion. Subaru has a series of commercials, and it's not saying our car goes from 0 to 60 or look at our flashy. What it actually showed was a destroyed Subaru. And next to it is a cop, next to it is a tow truck driver. And he only says 2 words, they lived. And next is the tow truck driver at the dump showing this horrible wreck of a car and simply saying, they lived. And the final scene was this young man with his pregnant wife and a bunch of little kids looking at a brand new Subaru and simply saying, we lived. So you don't even have to have a in-depth story. You can tell really heart-wrenching, amazing stories using very few words. And again, nowhere in there did it talk about features and benefits and sales and pricing. This was building a brand. This was building an emotion. This was building a moment. And that is storytelling. That is not throwing facts and figures at people. It's working through pathos. It's working through emotion. It's working through, wow, I believe what these guys believe. I want to be a part of that.
Yeah, it's funny. In an earlier podcast on, I don't know if it was in my branding or storytelling or which one it was, I mentioned that commercial and every time I'm talking about something like this with somebody who's in graphics or branding or whatever, they always bring up that Subaru commercial. And it's interesting because how you say they weren't selling features. The old car commercials did, if you remember, has a V8, 2 turbo, whatever. And I know nothing about cars, and to be honest, as a woman who really connects, unless you're into race car driving, and I have a lot of friends that are, but the bottom line is I still wouldn't care about if it was a turbocharged or whatever, because I care. I'm a safety girl. Mm-hmm. So I connected with that commercial only because of it screamed safety without having to say it.
Absolutely. Another commercial in that series was this young guy going to buy his first car, and he's looking at these shiny things like, is it fast? And the next bit is he's a little older, and he's like, wow, is that fast? And the third bit is he's married now holding a baby going, is it safe? And again, that's what they're selling. They're not selling 0 to 60. Here's a commercial of speeding around a closed track. I always wanted to say, show me your car in real traffic. Where are all these closed tracks you guys are driving on?
Yeah, and then when they do the simulated on the track, it's like, well, you can't really relate because you're not going to do that. And they say, don't try this at home. Mm-hmm. But we could probably talk about storytelling and different nuances of it for like hours. But if you were going to give one storytelling, for social media advice, okay, what would it be to our audience here?
Never forget and always keep this thought in your mind of any story you're going to share or tell. Why would they care? What is the reason you're telling the story? What is the result you're looking to get out of it? And most importantly, it's the old WIIFM radio station. What's in it for me? Why would anyone care about this story? What are they going to get out of it? What is the moral? What is the lesson? Are you looking for them to laugh? Are you looking them to ask more questions? What's the end result of the story you're going to tell? Sometimes you just want to share something. Hey, this happened to me today. It was really interesting, blah, blah, blah. That's fine. And you can build up on that. You can have people following you saying, wow, this is a really interesting person. This is a really interesting brand. I want to find out what happens next. But you always have to keep in mind, why should your reader care? What are they going to get out of it? You may be thinking, oh, well, my product or service can solve all their problems, but you just can't info dump that. You can kind of breadcrumb it. Again, you don't want to hit them over the head with the sales bat. You want to seduce them into your world. You want to seduce them into your brand. And that has to be slowly and building up and engaging, because what you think they want may not be what they need, but maybe they need something else that you can give them. And if you're hammering on one side so much, they're going to leave not knowing that you could have solved this other problem they had. So storytelling, again, engage, bring people into your world and listen to what their feedback is, because what you think you may be telling them, that may not be what they're hearing. And so you may have to tweak your story a little bit if you realize that it's being misunderstood by the people you're trying to reach.
Yeah, I think that actually is the most important thing of this whole topic that we've been talking about over the last couple months here now, with branding and voice and storytelling. And interestingly enough, I remember when I first started out, I always would go from the perspective of what I needed. And we sometimes forget it's not about us, it's about them. And people do it all the time. I thought that they would need this can opener, or I thought they would need this car because I like it, And so the bottom line is that we have to hit their pain points. We have to hit what, they need. And you got to do it fast, because you probably got about 30 seconds to do that. Mm-hmm. So I want to thank you, Merrill. It has been a pleasure of just getting to know you, and you bring a lot of knowledge to the table. And if anybody wants to get in contact with Merrill, she's on LinkedIn. I'm going to put all her information in my social media posts when I post this. And thank you so much.
Thanks for listening to the Biz Gone Social podcast. Find us on Instagram at Biz Gone Social for extra tips. Check back weekly for new episodes. Until next time, stay social.